The moment I clicked play on the CCTV footage, my life flipped from mundane to a full-blown crisis. I installed those cameras because of the break-ins down the street, never imagining they'd unveil a break-in of a different kind, a betrayal. Julia had been working late a lot, or so she said. Community events, extra shifts at the library, her reasons were endless. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But then, her phone started acting like a top-secret document, always on silent, always just out of reach. That nagging doubt started to eat at me, whispering louder each day, something's off. That evening, the alert pinged on my phone. Motion detected in your living room. Expecting to see a stray cat we'd been feeding, what I saw instead gutted me. There was Julia, my Julia, laughing and leaning into a kiss with someone who definitely wasn't me. His name, I'd later learn, was Thomas. The scene, seared into my memory, replayed on multiple nights' footage. I felt like I was suffocating, my heart squeezed by a vice of betrayal. But I needed undeniable proof, something concrete. Digging through her purse felt like the ultimate betrayal on my part, yet the receipts for dinners, the little gifts, the hotel bookings screamed the truth I couldn't deny any longer. The confrontation was inevitable. Julia, we need to talk, I said, my voice a mix of rage and heartbreak as I confronted her with the evidence. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, crumbled before me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Mike. It was a mistake. It meant nothing, I swear. Her pleas for forgiveness, her admissions of a mistake, they clashed with the cold, hard evidence of her betrayal. My world, once secure and predictable, had shattered into a million pieces, each reflecting the lie my life had become. The lock clicked into place with a finality that echoed the shattering of my trust. I'd just kicked Julia out, the woman I pledged my life to, because she decided ours wasn't enough. Standing in the doorway, watching her plead through tears, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. Please, Mike, we can fix this, she sobbed, but her betrayal was a chasm too wide to bridge. There's nothing left to fix, Julia, I said, closing the door on us, on everything we'd built. Driven by a fury I couldn't quench, I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent the CCTV footage to Thomas's wife. If my world was going to fall apart, I wasn't going down alone. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Thomas confronted me the next day, his face a mask of rage. You've ruined my life, he bellowed, shoving me hard against my car in the company parking lot. My coworkers' eyes were on us, a mixture of shock and curiosity painting their faces. It didn't take long for fists to fly, for the accumulated pain and betrayal to manifest into physical blows. We were a tangle of rage and desperation, fighting for all we'd lost, until the wail of police sirens broke through the haze. Handcuffed and humiliated, we were carted off for public disturbance, a new low in my rapidly unraveling life. The news spread like wildfire, a juicy scandal for our small community to feast on. Did you hear about Mike and Julia? Became the whisper on everyone's lips, a stain on our reputations we'd never wash off. Julia, caught in the crossfire of our private war, lost her job at the library. The place she loved, her refuge from the chaos of our failing marriage, gone because of the scandal. Sitting in that cold, sterile police station, it hit me. My quest for revenge hadn't just hurt Julia and Thomas, it had obliterated the remnants of the life I once knew. The cost of my anger was higher than I'd ever imagined, leaving me to wonder if any of it was worth it. The world seemed to shrink around me, my life condensing into a single, burning focus: revenge. It consumed me, gnawing at the edges of my sanity, pushing away the friends who tried to pull me back from the brink. Mike, this isn't you, they'd say, but they didn't understand. The betrayal wasn't theirs to forgive. Julia, meanwhile, found refuge with a friend willing to overlook her transgressions. I knew because I couldn't help myself. I tracked her, watched her, desperate for some sign of remorse, some indication that she felt even a fraction of the pain she'd inflicted on me. But life, it seemed, moved on for her. She even landed a job at a bookstore, a fresh start I begrudgingly acknowledged she was entitled to. Work became an afterthought, my performance slipping through my fingers like sand. The warning from my boss jolted me, a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of my vendetta. Shape up, Mike, or you're out. His words echoed in my head, a lifeline I wasn't sure I wanted to grasp. In the midst of my self-imposed exile, a mutual friend, playing the peacemaker, suggested counseling. It could help you both, she urged, her optimism a stark contrast to my bitterness. But the thought of sitting across from Julia, discussing our feelings as if they could mend what was broken, was unbearable. I refused. Then came the letter, Julia's handwriting unmistakable on the envelope. I didn't need to open it to know its contents: apologies, pleas for understanding, maybe even the offer of friendship. It didn't matter. Into the fire it went, the flames consuming her words, her apologies turning to ash. When word reached me that Julia was seeing someone new, it was as if the final piece of my resolve snapped. The injustice of it, her ability to simply move on and find happiness while I was stuck in this endless loop of anger and retribution, was maddening. My friends' warnings, my boss's threats, even Julia's attempts at reconciliation, all faded into the background, overshadowed by a resurgence of bitterness and a renewed desire for revenge. The world I'd known, the life I'd built, was unrecognizable now, transformed by a cascade of choices driven by betrayal and a quest for vengeance that promised no satisfaction, no matter the outcome. I never thought I'd be the guy skulking around in the dead of night, fueled by a toxic mix of rage and despair. Yet, there I was, key in hand, etching my hurt into the paint of Julia's car. It was a moment of madness, a tangible mark of my pain, but as the first light of dawn caught the gleam of the scratched metal, reality crashed down on me. The act, meant to deliver a final blow to Julia, was instead captured in high definition by the watchful eye of a CCTV camera perched innocently above. The police didn't knock, they banged, a relentless sound that matched the pounding in my head. Handcuffed and hauled away, I realized this was more than just a rock bottom, it was a new, unimaginable low. The job that I'd clung to, the last vestige of my previous life, vanished with my arrest, leaving me adrift in a sea of my own making. Meanwhile, Julia found solace in the arms of another, her happiness blossoming even as mine withered. The irony wasn't lost on me. In my quest to make her feel a fraction of my pain, she had moved on, leaving me to wallow in the consequences of my actions. The news of Julia's decision to leave the city with her partner was a cold splash of reality. My actions hadn't anchored her to me, they had severed the last ties that bound us. In a last-ditch effort to salvage a shred of dignity, I went to her, a man broken by his own doing. "Julia, please, I'm sorry," I stammered, standing at her doorstep, a place I once called home. But the door that opened wasn't the gateway to forgiveness I'd hoped for. Julia, stronger and more resolved than I'd ever seen her, didn't hesitate. "Mike, it's too late. I've moved on. You should, too." Watching her drive away the next morning, the finality of our severed ties hit me with the force of a freight train. The love of my life, the woman I vowed to protect, was gone, leaving me with nothing but the ruins of the life I'd destroyed. The road to redemption seemed insurmountable, a path marred by the wreckage of my own making. As her car disappeared into the distance, a sobering thought settled in my heart. The cost of my actions was far greater than I ever imagined, a price paid not in moments of anger, but in the endless stretch of what remained of my life. The night I found myself alone, staring at the empty walls of what used to be our bedroom, the weight of my actions finally sank in. It was in that hollow silence, with the echo of my mistakes for company, that I realized something had to change. I was at rock bottom, jobless, friendless, and now, without the woman I once vowed to spend my life with. The path to self-destruction I'd walked down on had led me here, and it was time to find my way back. I started therapy the following week, a decision that felt like admitting defeat but ended up being my first step towards redemption. Sitting in that small, too bright room across from a stranger who promised nothing but a safe space to unravel, I began to unpack the anger, the loss, and the myriad of emotions I'd bottled up. It wasn't just Julia's betrayal, I found myself admitting out loud, the words tasting bitter but necessary. I played a part in our downfall too. Reconnecting with old friends proved harder than I anticipated. The phone calls were awkward, the apologies stumbled and often met with silence. I'd burned bridges, acted out in ways that left deep scars, and while some offered cautious forgiveness, others were not so willing to forget. It was a tough pill to swallow, acknowledging the friendships I'd sacrificed on the altar of my vengeance. In search of an outlet, a way to make sense of the chaos I'd created, I started a blog. Typing out the first post felt like speaking into the void, but as I continued to share my journey, raw and unfiltered, the void began to talk back. Comments trickled in, from people who'd been through their own battles with betrayal, with revenge. There was solace in our shared experiences, a community of strangers finding comfort in each other's stories. News of Julia's engagement reached me through the grapevine of mutual friends, a bittersweet pill that forced me to confront the final remnants of what could have been. She was moving on, finding happiness in a new life far removed from the wreckage of ours. It stung, yes, but beneath that sting was a flicker of something else, hope. Hope that moving forward was possible, not just for her, but for me too. As I continued to write, to reflect, and to heal, my blog morphed into something bigger than my own story. It became a beacon for those navigating their own dark waters, a reminder that redemption was within reach if you were willing to work for it. And as Julia built her future with someone else, I began to construct one for myself, grounded not in revenge or regret, but in understanding, forgiveness, and the promise of new beginnings. The day I walked into the local charity to volunteer, it was like stepping into a different world. A world where my past mistakes and heartaches didn't define me. Here, I was just Mike, a guy trying to make a difference. It felt good, real good. Helping out at the shelter, seeing the direct impact of my actions on others' lives, it gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. It was during one of these volunteer shifts that I met Anna. She was different from anyone I'd known, her kindness and genuine interest in those around her drawing me in. We started slow, coffee dates that turned into long walks, conversations that delved deeper than I'd gone in years. She knew my story, the blog made sure of that, but she saw beyond it, to the man I was becoming. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to entertain the possibility of love again. Then, out of the blue, Thomas reached out. The last person I expected to hear from, yet there he was, on the other end of the line, his voice heavy with his own burdens. "Mike, I need advice," he said, a vulnerability in his tone I'd never heard before. We met up, two men linked by a shared history of mistakes and consequences. Our conversation was long and raw, filled with admissions of fault and the desire to change. I shared my journey, the painful process of letting go of anger and moving towards forgiveness. It was cathartic, speaking to someone who understood the depth of the pain caused by betrayal. Thomas left that meeting with a resolve to fix the bridges he'd burned, inspired by the changes he saw in me. It was a reminder of how far I'd come, not just in healing myself but in reaching a place where I could help others on their path to redemption. That encounter led me to start a support group for men grappling with betrayal and the lure of revenge. What began as a handful of guys sitting around a coffee table, sharing their stories, grew into something larger. We became a community, a place where men could come to find understanding, support, and a way forward. The support group's growth was a testament to the need for a space where men could express their vulnerabilities and work through their pain without judgment. It was rewarding, watching the group evolve, seeing firsthand the healing power of shared experiences and mutual support. Through volunteering, finding love, connecting with Thomas, and starting the support group, my life had taken a turn I never anticipated. Each step forward was a step away from the man I used to be, towards a future filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. The day I realized I was genuinely happy again, it hit me like a burst of sunlight through a long overcast sky. There I was, laughing and planning a future with Anna, a woman who walked into my life when I was convinced I'd never find love again. Our relationship wasn't just about the romance. It was built on a foundation of trust, open communication, and a deep understanding of the value of second chances. We'd been through our respective storms, but together, we found our calm. The moment I proposed to Anna, it was nothing like the grand gestures you see in movies. It was intimate, just us, in our little living room that had become a home filled with love and new memories. The simplicity of it all underscored the profoundness of our journey. "Will you marry me?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. Her "yes" was a whisper, but it echoed like a shout of joy in my heart. Meanwhile, Julia had found her own path to happiness, marrying her partner in a ceremony in her new city. The news reached me not as a sting, but as a soft closure to a chapter long closed. She deserved happiness, just as I had found mine. Reflecting on the past, I realized the journey from the depths of despair to where I stood now was not just about moving on, it was about transforming my pain into something positive. My blog, once a personal outlet for my anguish and regret, had morphed into a lifeline for others grappling with their darkness. Compiling those entries into a book felt like the next step, a way to reach out and offer hope on a larger scale. The book's success took me by surprise. It became a bestseller, resonating with people far beyond my initial circle. Speaking engagements and workshops followed, allowing me to advocate for mental health and the healing power of forgiveness. My story, once a source of personal shame, had become a beacon of hope for others. Then came the day Anna and I welcomed our child into the world, a tangible symbol of new beginnings and the love that had grown between us. Holding our baby for the first time, I felt the last remnants of my old self slip away, replaced by a man who had learned, grown, and was ready to embrace this new chapter. In the quiet hours of the night, with my family asleep, I penned a letter to Julia. Not to send, but to articulate the final piece of forgiveness and let go of any lingering resentment. It was my way of acknowledging our shared past, thanking her for the lessons learned, and officially closing that door to open another fully to my future. As I sealed the letter, placing it in a drawer, a sense of peace enveloped me. I was ready to move forward, not just for myself, but for Anna, our child, and the many lives I hoped to touch with my story. My journey from despair to redemption was complete, but the path to helping others had just begun. With hope, gratitude, and a heart open to all the possibilities the future held, I stepped into the dawn of a new day, ready to write the next chapter of